Right. Hello, everyone. We're going to give you a moment to get logged in. Welcome to the What's Buzzin webinar series with Parent and Family Programs. Like I said, I'm going to let you guys kind of get logged in and get comfortable, and then we will get started. Yes. And feel free as we start some of our webinars, you're coming from a far or near place and you want to pop in the chat and say where you're coming from, where you're tuning in from, feel free to kind of pass the time by letting us know where you guys are from. Yeah, I'll pull that up here. Recording going. Okay, perfect. All righty. We're starting to slow down on our participant coming in. Okay, let's get started. So I'm Ashley Arnold, Assistant Director here with Parent and Family Programs. I'm joined not only by Sharon. Awesome. Yes, I see Sharon put in the chat. That's our Director of Parent and Family Programs. And we're also joined today by Laura Williams with Undergraduate Research. Laura, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us more about what you're doing.
Absolutely. I would be happy to introduce myself. So hello, everyone. I really appreciate the magic of Zoom and video conferencing that we can be able to share this information with you in a live setting where you can ask us questions. So that's really great. My name is Dr. Laura Williams. I am the Director of Undergraduate Research in the Office of Undergraduate Education here at Georgia Tech. And my background is that I have a PhD in microbiology, and I just started my position at Georgia Tech in July. Prior to that, I was an associate professor of biology at a small college in New England, where it was primarily undergraduates, and I did a lot of active microbiology research with undergraduate students. Through that experience, I really saw the benefits and the enthusiasm that students have for research and all of the great things that it leads to in their educational journey. So when this position became available, that's about facilitating and supporting undergraduate research experiences as part of their Georgia Tech journey, I thought, this is great. I really want to do this. And part of what this job entails is talking to folks like you about what is the landscape of undergraduate research at Georgia Tech, why might your students want to be involved, and how can they get involved? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think I will go ahead and share my screen, and we can start, as we always do, looking at slides.
Yay. The chat seems to be disabled, you guys, so we'll be using the Q&A to ask questions as we're going through this presentation. If you have anything you need, like I said, use that Q&A opportunity right there, and we'll be able to see live your questions and things that you have to say regarding the presentation. Alrighty, go ahead, Laura, it's on you.
Perfect. So the first slide I've got here is just a very general slide to share with you the Office of Undergraduate Education as a broad resource for undergraduate related resources, events, different offices and units that focus on different parts of the undergraduate experience at Georgia Tech. So I would encourage you to go to the website. You can find it just by Georgia Tech Undergraduate Education and explore a little bit to see what's available. There's great things like tutoring and academic success. So you can find a lot there that's very great to support your student's journey. And so today, very specifically, what we're going to talk about is undergraduate research. And then I'm also going to share a bit about student innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is a unique strength, I think, of Georgia Tech. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what opportunities there are in that space and how it intersects with undergraduate research. So this is my information and also my fun email address, which I know is lots of L's and I's. And so I always used to tell my students when they would put my email in for letter of recommendation requests, I'd say, make sure you have all of those because it does look a little, there's a lot going on there. So you're welcome to get in touch with me if you have follow-up questions. And I'm always happy to talk to students as well. That's one of the main things that we are focused on here. So I always like to start with, why do research? And we talk about this when we do orientation sessions. We talk about this with prospective students, with our recently arrived students. We talk about this with second-year students. So it's always a good conversation to have about why research might be a valuable part of your student's journey at Georgia Tech. And there are a lot of reasons why participating in undergraduate research can be a valuable experience. One of the biggest that I have personally seen, and my students, my own research students tell me, is that it is truly a transformative experience. So when our students come to Georgia Tech and they go to their classes and they're learning about their chosen majors and fields and topics, they sit in class and they're kind of accumulating information, but there is kind of a tendency to be kind of a passive recipient of knowledge. What research lets students do is transform into an active generator of knowledge. They take what they're learning in their courses and they can apply it to a project with an open-ended question that lets them say, oh, you know, I learned this idea about how you could run this particular assay, or how you could run this particular procedure, or how this programming language works in this class that I'm taking. And now I'm working on this problem with my faculty mentor, and I can see an application for that. So maybe I'll try to work that in. And I think it really builds students' confidence in their membership of a professional community. And that's really what our goal is in higher education, is to have students come in as students and leave as active members of their professional community who are contributing to knowledge, who are contributing to advancing their field. And I really think that undergraduate research is a fantastic way for students to do this. It's also really important if your student is considering graduate school, professional programs, even they're going out straight into industry. Having an undergraduate research experience can be a great way to demonstrate their abilities in a lot of what we call competencies: problem-solving skills, communication skills, team skills, leadership skills. In addition to just being a fantastic field-specific experience, it's a great way to build some of these kind of competencies, build these skill sets that we know graduate programs, professional programs, and employers are looking for. So we call this experiential learning, and that's why I'm kind of housed in the Office of Experiential and Engaged Learning. Undergraduate research is definitely an experiential learning opportunity. A lot of it happens outside the classroom, although we are kind of working on how to get undergraduate research into the classroom as well. So that's my sales pitch for why people should be involved in undergraduate research. But you're all here knowing that this is an undergraduate research seminar. So I feel like probably there's quite a few of you who are already on board with this. So the next question is, okay, we're on board with undergraduate research. It's valuable. Our students should do it. So what does it look like and how can they do it? One thing that I always like to share with students about research at Georgia Tech is that it is a wide variety of disciplines, a wide variety of projects, a wide variety of interests, questions, goals, discovery that you're doing. And students will often ask, do I have to do research in my major? You do not. Interdisciplinary work is really valuable, really important. It helps you understand how your skill set and how your knowledge can work with other groups and other areas. So we do not restrict students to doing research within their major. We encourage students to think about what's the project and the question that most excites you. Maybe you're a physics major and you find that actually in AE, in some form of engineering, is where you're going to really find a question that excites you. Or maybe you're in earth and atmospheric sciences and you find that there's something in computing that you're going, oh, that's really interesting. Let's figure out how we could analyze all of this data about climate, for example. So we actually encourage students to think less about fields and more about projects and questions that might be interesting to them. And there's a whole variety of this happening at Georgia Tech. We have incredibly talented faculty who are leaders in their fields, and they each have specific interests and specific research programs and scholarship programs that they're advancing and students can intersect with. So the answer to this question, what does research look like at Georgia Tech, is that it looks like a lot of different things. And there's lots of places where students can find things that really spark their enthusiasm. So how and when should students get involved? This is our big question that we get from students. We get students who come in on day one and they're ready to go. How do I get into a lab? How do I pair up with a faculty mentor? And we find some students who are a little later in their educational journey and start to realize that maybe this is something they want to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the options for getting involved in undergraduate research here in a second, but I would say here that I think the most important thing for students to do is to start thinking about how they might like to get involved in research and how that intersects with their degree program. I will say that sometimes we find that students wait a bit too long. So waiting until like their fourth year and then they're trying to get involved in undergraduate research, that can be a little bit more difficult. And that's simply because if you're partnering up with a faculty mentor and asking to come into their group and receive some training, well, they're kind of thinking, oh, I would do this training and then the student might graduate and they won't really have an opportunity to capitalize on all of this training. It's not to say that you can't get involved in research as a fourth-year student. There are definitely options to do this, but I would really encourage students, you don't have to feel like you have to wait until you've accumulated this amount of knowledge or this amount of coursework before starting to explore this as an option. It can be really beneficial to get involved in undergraduate research your second year, the beginning of your third year, because then that really gives you time to really dig into a project and see those outcomes that you're hoping for. Maybe it's sharing a poster at a conference, or maybe it's contributing to a paper. The more time you have with that project, the more likely you'll be able to kind of have that deep involvement. So when to get involved, I encourage students to kind of start to think as early as possible about how undergraduate research might be a part of their Georgia Tech journey, so they can begin to kind of put those pieces in place. How you get involved, we're going to talk about that now. So the classic way to get involved in research at any institution is to conduct research with the faculty. So we have professors, we have faculty members at Georgia Tech and at the Georgia Tech Research Institute, GTRI, and they have their own research programs. They have graduate students and postdocs often working with them, maybe staff scientists. And they often have funding from sources like National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health. They have big picture goals for the projects that they're doing. Where I said I was a microbiologist. Our lab talked about and was interested in predatory bacteria. So these are bacteria that have evolved to attack, hunt, and kill other bacteria. And that includes these drug-resistant bacterial pathogens that we know cause a lot of bad infections. And so you'll find that faculty will all have kind of these big overarching research programs, like something similar to what I just described, where they've got big picture goals and big picture questions they're working on a continual basis with their teams. Many of our Georgia Tech faculty include undergraduate students as part of those teams. So they're invested in helping undergraduate students get these research experiences and develop these skills. So we have research across all 6 colleges at Georgia Tech. We have research at GTRI. And the good thing is we have a lot of different mechanisms for how students can participate in this. There are courses that allow students to get graded academic credit by doing a research experience with a faculty mentor. There are options for students to take what we call audit research courses, which are free, non-billable courses. The students don't get a grade, but it does appear on their transcript to say that they were participating in research. So here we've got an example of one of our really fantastic faculty. This is Dr. Todd Solchek. And he has had over 300 undergraduate students participate in his lab, and they have had these wonderful outcomes where 62 fellowships, 57 students have co-authored papers. It's probably higher numbers now. But it just shows that, you know, there are faculty who are very dedicated to involving our students in research. On the very right of this slide, you can see some information about what we call the research option. This is a transcript designator program. So it means that if a student participates in this program and fulfills the requirements, they will receive on their transcript a notation, a designator that says this student completed the research option in, for example, biomedical engineering. And so this is something we have more information on at our website, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. So this is something that students kind of explore and see if it fits into their degree program and the rest of their plan for their Georgia Tech experience. So conducting research with faculty, where students reach out to faculty and get involved in that faculty's research program, is a really common way for students to participate in research. One of the biggest questions that we get is, how do I find a research experience with faculty? So I am actually going to probably spend a little bit of time on this slide because I feel like this is the biggest place that my office gets questions from students, is how do I do this? How do I reach out to faculty? We have a website, a page on our website called 7 Steps to Get Involved that kind of gives its students an outline of how to approach getting a position with a faculty member. I've just shown you the first 4 steps here because these are really the key ones. The first thing we always suggest that students do is sit down and think a bit about what are their specific interests. So students will contact my office to ask for some help finding a research experience. And they will state their major, like I'm a computer science major and I'm looking for a research experience. It's great that they're looking, but that didn't tell me very much about what are they interested in? What questions or what advances or what technology are they really excited about? And sometimes students aren't sure yet, and that's okay. But it's a good exercise for the students to kind of sit and think, okay, what do I, in my field, in my major, what are the things that I'm encountering in courses that I'm like, that's really interesting? Or why did I decide to pick this major in the first place? Like, what was it about this major that I thought, you know, I'm really interested in artificial intelligence, or I'm really interested in, you know, rocket propulsion. And so I want to kind of think about how I might be involved in learning more about those through research. So having some thought about your interests is a good place to start. And then the next thing we encourage students to do is to take a look at what faculty are doing in that space. This involves a lot of using our fun friend Google and the internet to kind of see what's out there that's publicly available that they can learn about what faculty are doing. So each college at Georgia Tech has its own website that has information about undergraduate research. Each school has its own website that has information about undergraduate research. But to be honest, most importantly, pretty much each faculty member at Georgia Tech has their own website where they have posted information about their active research programs. Some of these are beautiful. Some of these I think must be professionally made because they're these wonderful websites that have all this wonderful animation that show all their projects and all their incredible fluorescent microscopy images and so forth. But regardless of the pizzazz of the website, pretty much all of our faculty have a web presence that describes their ongoing research, and in some cases will even show their current teams, including undergraduate students. I really encourage students to take some time to look through what's available. What are the faculty already kind of putting out there that's public facing, that tells them what they're interested in, what the faculty are pursuing, and what their teams look like. If they have 16 undergraduate students listed, that's a pretty good sign that they have a good infrastructure in place for helping undergraduate students interact with these projects. So our goal with this is for students to try to identify about 4 or 5 faculty members who there's a clear connection between their interests and what these faculty are doing. At that point, we encourage students to reach out to the faculty. And this can be kind of scary because you're basically cold emailing somebody who has a PhD in the field that you're studying, and it can be intimidating. But there's a reason these folks have chosen to have faculty at a higher education institute. They understand that the students are here for these types of experiences. And so what we ask students to do is to kind of tell a little bit about themselves, explain why they're interested in that faculty member's research, explain those connections. And the biggest thing that I say here is that it's very important for the student to have a clear ask. So this is not unique to higher education or undergraduate research language. This is like classic, how do you craft a to the point email? You want to send an email where the ask is very clear. One of the things that I will see students do, especially if they come to me and say, here's the email I'm sending out, what do you think? Is they'll start really well. They'll say, I'm so-and-so, I'm a 3rd-year computer science major, and I'm really interested in your research on human-robot interactions, and I want to seen your papers on this. I saw that on your website you're doing these projects. Very interested in how this intersects with my interests. I'd like to join your lab. Signed so-and-so. That means that this is a very open-ended email, and the faculty member opens it and says, okay, now what? So what I encourage students to do is ask a faculty member for a brief meeting, just 15 minutes, and then give some blocks of time that they're available. So I'm available Tuesdays, 1 to 3 p.m., Thursdays, 10 to noon, and Fridays, 1 to 4. I would love to come by your office or meet you virtually for 15 minutes to chat about the possibility of undergraduate research in your lab. That makes it so much easier for our super, super busy faculty to write like a super quick, fantastic, sounds good, come by Thursday at 2:30, see you then. I would say that's the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice we consistently give out to undergraduate students is that missing piece of the ask. A short meeting with some clear blocks of availability is going to make it easier for that faculty member to reply quickly. Otherwise, you kind of end up in this back and forth where you're trying to coordinate schedules. And as all of us know, the instant you got to do lots of back and forth, you lose the momentum. So that's a piece that we find when we interact with students is a place where we remind them about that. So that's a good thing if you have students interested in undergraduate research. That's a good thing to emphasize with them is, hey, you want to make it really easy for these faculty to get back to you. Ask for a quick meeting, tell them when you're available. The last step I've shown here is the follow-up. And I definitely understand this too, because I've advised a lot of research students and they will kind of nervously send out these emails into the ether and then they'll wait and they may not get a reply and it may be a week and they're going, I haven't heard anything. Oh, they hate me. They definitely do not hate you. They're just super, super busy. So we always encourage students to send a polite follow-up if it's been a week or so and they haven't heard something. I can attest from a past faculty perspective, it's something where I've been going to bed at night and I'll think, oh no, that person emails me and I haven't gotten back to them and it's on my list. So oftentimes the faculty will be happy for a polite follow-up to say, okay, right, this person got in touch with me and haven't had a chance to get back to them. So let me do that now. So a follow-up is always good. I would say that this right here is where it's a chance to kind of build some confidence because our students are, by and large, this makes them nervous. This makes them a little anxious, reaching out to people they don't know. And then what if they don't hear back? maybe they don't like me. But this is a good place to say, nope, you've got to have a follow-up. This is a real common way to do this when you're trying to set up informational interviews or cold call people. The follow-up is good. Just be persistent and positive, and we'll see what happens. So I'm happy to answer questions about this a little bit more, because I think this is the place that I feel like we get the most inquiry from students, is this process of how do I connect with a faculty member? How do I get in touch with these research experiences? But I've spent a ton of time on this slide, so now I'm going to move on. So
we do have a couple questions here, if you don't mind.
oh yeah,
running through
sure.
those.
Yeah, if we've got
Yeah.
questions already, absolutely.
Yeah, so the first one here is it easy for international students to find research programs?
Um, so there are certain places where, because of different policies, we have to international students have a little bit more to navigate. But in terms of working with Georgia Tech faculty, for example, to get the academic credit courses, absolutely. We definitely support our international students for engaging with those experiences. And faculty are very used to working with international students. They have a lot of international students on the graduate side as well.
The next question says, generally, what qualifications are faculty looking for? Do they usually post what they're looking for on their website or postings?
That is a fantastic question. So generally speaking, I kind of group our faculty into two populations. One is a population of people who, if they have a position, they will post it. And we have a database called PairMe, which was designed by a former Georgia Tech student, and we're using it to help try to match research students with open positions. So there are some faculty who will make use of that, who, if they're interested in bringing on an undergraduate student, will write up a description and post it to that. And then that lays out all of their kind of, here's what we expect. You should have probably taken these courses, or you should have a little bit of this background in order to really get the most out of this experience. And then we have a population of faculty who don't actively recruit. They kind of see who comes to them, or they see who their current students know, or maybe their grad students have TA'd and so forth. And in those cases, it's going to be asking that faculty mentor, what are you looking for when you take someone on? Most of the time, they're not necessarily going to expect that there's an extensive research background. This is undergraduate education, so this is where we're supposed to be providing those experiences. So it's less about, we expect the student to come in with research background, and it might be more about, well, we really need you to have had these fundamental foundational courses before you can really get a lot out of this experience. And that's something the faculty mentor should be able to tell an interested student.
How do you recommend students to use the undergraduate research ambassadors to pursue undergraduate research opportunities?
That's a fantastic question. And I do have a slide in here about our wonderful undergraduate research ambassadors. I'm going to pop ahead to it so that I can, and I'll come back, I promise. So our undergraduate research ambassador group is a student group of experienced undergraduate researchers. There's about 40 of them, and they come from all different disciplines and majors. You can find information about them on our website, so undergradresearch.gautech.edu. There's a whole drop-down menu at the top of our homepage about the URAs. They are a fantastic resource for peer-to-peer mentoring. They hold office hours, so each individual ambassador has office hours that a student can drop in or schedule an appointment to talk about. I'm interested in biomedical engineering, or I'm interested in industrial design. How do I go about this? And so you can meet with someone, a student who is already doing research in that area, and they can help tell you about their experience or any connections that they know about. I would very much encourage students to connect with the undergraduate research ambassadors. They hold a ton of campus events. They're fantastic. They're a wonderful resource for students. I'm gonna go
Perfect.
back.
I'll let you go back and then I'll because I think you answered this, so this will be a quick one, and then we'll jump back into the presentation and jump into the questions after
Mhm.
that.
Okay.
So this one says, shall the student send a follow-up email right after the meeting with the faculty or 1 week after?
So the follow-up, if you are at step 3 and you've sent out your cold emails into the world and you haven't heard anything, I usually ask students to give faculty about a week to get back to them because some people kind of clear their inbox, in a certain way. So if you reached out, if you've made your initial reach out and haven't heard anything, I'd give it about a week and then I'd send a polite follow-up. If you made your initial reach out, got the meeting, went to the meeting, ideally at the meeting, you would have discussed with the faculty mentor, what are the next steps? So they would either say, yeah, you seem like you have the background, we've got a project that might work for you. And then there should be a really clear coming out of that meeting, kind of what do we do next? If that requires follow-up, absolutely follow up with them with an email a day or so after the meeting and say, hey, thank you so much for meeting with me. Here's what we talked about. Here's the next step that I'm planning to take. Does this sound good to you? Sometimes what faculty mentors will do in that meeting is they'll say, this sounds great. I think your interests really align with our group. I'm going to put you in touch with a graduate student or a postdoc who can tell you a little bit more about what projects there are and will probably act as your day-to-day mentor. And so maybe at that point, you're kind of handed off to someone and then you can follow up with them as well. We have some excellent grad students and postdoc mentors. Many of them are really committed to making sure our students have a good research experience. Ashley, was
Already,
that,
I'll let you keep going. We do have a few more questions, a little bit more detailed. So I'll let you get through this part of the presentation and then we can jump back into those questions.
perfect? Okay, so these are great questions about how to find a research experience with faculty. Another option I want to make sure I share is vertically integrated projects, or VIP. So VIP is a model for undergraduate research and research in general, in which it's a team-based model. So it's led by faculty. Faculty identify like a big picture question or a big picture problem. And then they recruit a team of people to work on that from different angles. So it's interdisciplinary, it's long-term, and it's large scale. The vertically integrated part means that there's undergraduate students, graduate students, postdocs, staff scientists, faculty. There's a lot of different people working on these. Now, the thing that I think is really fantastic about this model, and full disclosure, this is not something that my office is involved with organizing. There's a separate VIP team of wonderful people who are in charge of kind of running the infrastructure for this. There's about 80 teams. So each of these teams are going to have different questions or research agendas. And the wonderful thing about this is that undergraduates can interact with this or engage with this through an application process. So in fall term, for spring term, there's an open application process that makes things a lot more straightforward for undergraduate students. So whereas with faculty, if you want to work with a particular faculty member on a project, there's this process by which you kind of have to reach out and navigate this email chain and try to get a meeting with them. For VIP, you can go to the website, vip.gatech.edu. They have information about the teams, each team, what they're working on, kind of their big picture questions, what fields it's intersecting with. And if your student says, oh, that one about equity in healthcare is really interesting to me, I want to work on that, they can apply to join that team. And there's some options here for getting academic credit. One of the nice things about both VIP courses and our research courses in our office is that they're variable credit. So you can a student can tune it to make sure that they don't overload themselves with too much work. This is a fantastic program. And just as an example, I'll show you, this is a VIP team that works on robots. So these are examples of the different robots that they're working on. I like that they've listed it as third-year robot, second-year robot. So our robots are working through their Georgia Tech journey as well. But this is one of the examples of kind of the types of work that students can intersect with and engage with through the VIP team. So what I've seen is that students can sometimes start in VIP to get a kind of an initial or foundational research experience. Some students stay with VIP because they really like the team and the question they're working on. Some students, after a semester or two of VIP experience, might then decide to kind of translate that experience into working with a specific faculty mentor. So this is a great inroad into research if students are interested in that. We offer some research funding through our office. Again, at undergradresearch.godtech.edu, you can find some information about this. So we have salary awards, we have travel awards, and also we don't have too much information about this funding from faculty because it can change depending on the year. But faculty can also sometimes have some funding to support students. But our two programs that we administer on a consistent basis are salary awards and travel awards. And we are really eager to try to fund as many folks as we can. We don't treat these as highly competitive, only the best of the best of the best will get money. We really try to stretch our budget so that as many students as possible can benefit from these programs. I mentioned the undergraduate research ambassadors, but I'll say it again, they're really wonderful. They're a great resource. It can be a wonderful thing to have a peer to talk to, a fellow student. They're less intimidating in some ways, but then also there's some on-the-ground information they know that we try to know, but they're the best resources for that. So I would really encourage students to get involved with them. We have a newsletter. It went out this morning at 11, so you missed this issue, but we send our newsletter out every 2 weeks on Thursday. And it has updates about things like the PURA programs, different resources, URA campus events. So the undergraduate research ambassadors, if they have events that they've organized, we feature those. It's a fantastic way to kind of stay in touch with what the undergraduate research landscape at Georgia Tech looks like. And it only comes once every 2 weeks, so we don't spam you, we promise. So I'm pausing on this slide just in case people want to take a picture of that QR code and sign up for our newsletter. You can also sign up for the newsletter through the website. So there's a sign up on our undergradresearch.godtech.edu. I'm getting really good at saying that website. Okay, at this point, I do want to make sure that I talk a little bit about the innovation and entrepreneurship space at Georgia Tech because it intersects with research in some really valuable ways. So I am going to do a couple of slides on this, and then I am going to be conscious of leaving time for questions because I can tell that we have some good questions going. So a bit of a transition here, but I want to introduce this innovation programs in innovation and entrepreneurship. There's a program called CreateX. And what this is a resource for students to learn about the entrepreneurship experience in the context of the Georgia Tech campus. So I'm going to fully admit that I am kind of your classic academic scientist. I just want to sit in my lab, I work on my bacteria, and think about how we might be able to use them to solve problems like, can we do something about drug-resistant bacterial infections with our bacteria? Great, but if we want to actually deliver a solution, somebody has to do that. So Georgia Tech has put a lot of infrastructure, resources, support in place for students to learn about and engage with the startup space, the entrepreneurship and innovation space. I have been really impressed with this, and I'm saying this as someone who I'm not very familiar with the business side of translating STEM solutions and scholarship solutions, research solutions into something you can deliver. I admit that. And the more I've learned about what Georgia Tech does in this, the more impressed I've been about how much is available to students to be able to experience this in kind of a low stakes, low-risk campus setting. So at the very least, they can say, I've tried it. I'm either really excited by it and I want to do this, or I don't like it at all and I'm going to go basic research, academic research focused. So this program, CreateX, has different stages where a student can kind of go through the process of how you would initiate, develop, and launch a startup. So if they've got an idea that's coming out of research, that's coming out of some aspect of what they're doing at Georgia Tech, they can start at this stage you can see in the blue where they have some ideation and discovery support. They can go into prototype, and there is even support for them to actually launch the startup. You may have heard of this. It's the Inventure Prize. So this is and we're in the thick of it right now. In fact, yesterday, my boss did the semifinal judging round for the this year's Inventure Prize. So this is for students, for undergraduate students, or you can see here very recent graduates, to put their ideas their innovation ideas, their startup ideas into a competition and get feedback about how they're doing, how they're developing, so forth. We have a lot of these kind of maker spaces and what Georgia Tech calls kind of design, build, play spaces. And these are places that are often student run, and they're available for students to use to advance their projects. So this is very much connected to undergraduate research because these are all resources that are available for students to use to try to work on their projects, to try to advance the kind of questions and the problems that they're working on. And I think it's really amazing that a lot of these are student run. So your students might get involved with running these and kind of managing them, which is also just a fantastic skill set to have. We've got this large kind of electronics makerspace called the Hive in the Interdisciplinary Design Commons. And all of these resources and infrastructure have really led to some major successes. So there have been quite a few companies that have launched by Georgia Tech founders, students who have acted as founders. Some of these have gone on to fantastic success. But I always at this point mention that your student does not have to participate in this program, launch a startup, and then sell it for a bunch of money to be successful here and learn something. Anybody who knows about the startup space knows that most startups fail. And so one of the things Georgia Tech wants to do with all of these resources is give students space, as we mentioned, in a low risk, low stakes campus environment, to see what it's like to try to launch a startup and give them the support, the resources that they're not going to have once they've graduated and out there competing with other people for, venture capital funds. So I've been really impressed by this. I think I've encouraged a lot of students to at least look into this to see if it's something they want to try out. And I say this as someone who was honestly a little bit allergic to the idea of this early in my career, but I very much see the use of this, and I can see how it can help students take their research from the lab or the research group to trying to see what it would look like to get it a solution that's out in the world. Okay, there's some student clubs for innovation and entrepreneurship as well. So similar to the undergraduate research ambassadors, there's some student groups that can help with innovation and entrepreneurship. We've got a few other resources at Tech Square. So there's a lot of really interesting things that Georgia Tech is launching and supporting in this space as well. And they have a newsletter too. I'm not responsible for this one, so I don't know the cadence at which they send it out. But if you would like some more information about innovation and entrepreneurship, these are a few of the websites, the social media, and then also the newsletter that they are using. I'll leave that up for a second. But that is basically my kind of whirlwind tour of innovation and entrepreneurship. I really felt like it was important to talk about that because it connects with our undergraduate research as well. And at this point, I'll put that up there again, Office of Undergraduate Education. So undergraduate research, innovation, entrepreneurship, and more, including kind of advising, academic success, tutoring, so forth. You can find a lot of that at the Office of Undergraduate Education website. And at this point, I am delighted to take more questions.
All right, thank you for your presentation. That was awesome. I'm going to jump right back in here with questions. The first says, how can research done at Emory University as a GT student be recognized on the student's transcript?
We do have some mechanisms for trying to get external credit, academic credit at Georgia Tech for an external research. Oftentimes that's going to be dependent on the individual school. So my office as undergraduate research is supportive of students being able to get credit for external research opportunities. Within each school, they might have some policies and procedures that they need to follow. So we do have some information on our website about that, but that's always a good question to ask the student's academic advisor, and they can hopefully point you to the proper, each school should have an undergraduate research coordinator. And that's a person who can field very specific undergraduate research questions that might intersect with school policy, degree programs, so forth. So we are supportive of it. If a student can't figure out who to ask a question to, they can always get in touch with us. But there should be some resources within the student school, academic advisor, undergraduate research coordinator, who can help them figure out what they need to do to get that recognized.
This question, I believe, is in reference to the steps listed as far as requesting these undergraduate research opportunities.
Mhm.
And so it says, my kid did the exact same thing that you said, but not all professors do things the way that you mentioned. It ends nowhere for my kid's research initiative at Georgia Tech.
What was the last part? Sorry.
Yes, it says that they did what you said, but not all professors will do it the way that you said.
Mhm.
And so it ends nowhere for my kids' research initiative at Georgia Tech.
Yes. So we hope that if students kind of follow this procedure, get in touch with faculty, that they'll be able to connect with someone who can bring them into their research group. Sometimes that doesn't happen. In that case, it's possible that maybe that student wants to take a look at VIP because it has that open application process. But I would also say if your student has really made the serious effort to reach out to folks and is getting really frustrated, please have them get in touch with us or talk to the undergraduate research ambassadors, because maybe we can help with this.
The next question says, can you please show one example where and how to find research opportunities?
Okay, so if you're, let me see, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and then I'm going to pull something up really quick. So we are currently working on making this particular tool more robust. So I'll pop it up really quick. So this is called Pair Me. This is a way for students to look for open research positions. Now, I will note that we kind of inherited this when I started in July. So we inherited this from a student group that was developing it. Those folks graduated. So what we're doing right now is trying to make this a bit more robust. So this is a potential tool for students to look for open research positions. I would also note too that if your student is on federal work study as part of their financial aid package, the Office of Financial Aid actually has a listing of research positions, and their undergraduate research. They're basically research experiences, research assistants that are flagged as federal work study. So if your student has that as an option, they could go look for those open positions and then be able to do research and use their work study for that as well. So I will say that on our end, we are looking to build up this particular tool to make it easier for professors who want to post positions to be able to do that. It's in the works, but we're hoping that we're going to be able to make this a more robust way for students to connect with open positions.
That's awesome. This question says, how should we see the involvement in research in terms of hours, week, and flexibility in specific times during the week? While I understand what this would change across research programs, I'm looking for a more broader estimate of the involvement expected.
That is a great question. So one of the things we encourage students to do is to have a conversation with, for example, their faculty mentor about weekly time commitment with some real honesty about what their availability is. We don't want people taking on 20 hours of research in a week if that's not manageable for them. What I would say is we tend to follow the guideline for what an academic credit hour is. So one academic credit hour translates to about 3 actual time hours working on a project. And so this is why it's really great that the research courses are variable. So a student can sign up for, whether they're getting graded or not, if they're taking the audit course, they can sign up for as little as 1 credit hour, which would be 3 hours a week on the project. And they can sign up for 2 or 3 credit hours, which would be 6 or 9 hours a week on the project. And that's a good thing to discuss with the mentor. When I was advising students, I told students that they probably want to try to aim for about 8 to 10 hours a week on the project. And that translates to a 3 credit hour course, basically. So if you think about like a standard lecture course, that's 3 credit hours. That's supposed to translate to about 9 to 10 hours of actual time spent towards that course. So I think that's a good guideline. Actually treating it like an academic course, even if they're taking the audit and they're not getting graded for it, it's just a good way to think about time. I think if you start saying 15, 20 hours, our students are very overloaded. That's a little too much, I think, for a lot of them to be able to sustain that. So I think treating it like a course is a good way to go.
This one's just really quick on your presentation. Can you go back to the club slide?
The innovation and I'm hoping they mean the innovation and entrepreneurship one. I'm not sure if they can respond in real time, but I'm guessing it.
Probably so. I think that is what they're referencing. If you ask that question about going back to the club slide, if you want to specify out in the Q&A, feel free to do so.
I'm thinking it's going to be
let's see.
this one because that was the only one that
Mhm.
actually did have the word club on it. So I'm hoping this is what they're after.
And
Can
then
you
if
see,
not, just
can you
let
see
us
that,
know.
Ashley?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
see that. That's perfect. What opportunities might there be for business students? It seems like most are focused on science or engineering fields.
That is an excellent point. That's something that I've noticed too since I got here in July. We definitely have really robust activity from College of Engineering, College of Computing, College of Sciences. And one of the things I'm working on is how I can support Ivan Allen College of Liberal Arts, the College of Design, and Scheller. One thing I've noticed with Scheller is that we have a lot of students who are business majors who end up kind of doing interdisciplinary work in other colleges or with faculty mentors from other colleges. In fact, the student we're going to feature in our newsletter 2 weeks from now is I think he's a business administration major, and he's working in something called the FinLab. So this is a financial innovation lab. Oh, he's got this interdisciplinary project that he's working on. So I think there's opportunity for business majors to get involved. It's something that I'm working on too, because I'd like to figure out how we can support them a bit better. So if you have a student who's a business major and looking for undergraduate research, please have them reach out to us because I'm very curious about how we can help them more.
Thank you. How do you think undergraduate research could provide some advantage or a credible pathway to finding financial assistance, particularly for international students by their second year?
That's a good question. In our office, our mechanisms for offering funding to students are pretty much, and I'm going to go away from this club's slide, so I hope the person who needed this got what they needed from that. Our mechanisms for providing funding essentially for students is the salary awards. In terms of, I'm going to interpret this question as the person perhaps asking about maybe scholarships or fellowships. I'm not immediately aware of any where it's directly related to undergraduate research, but that's a good thing for us to look into. And maybe if we can find that, we can add it to our website.
Thank you. Are there opportunities for first-year students, i.e. incoming sophomores?
First year students, incoming sophomores.
Well, I guess it meant like more like upcoming sophomores.
Oh, I see. Oh, like rising sophomores. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, got it. Got it. Okay. So yes, the VIP program, if you're going to have second year standing, and I would note with this that they have made the point to me that second year standing means you have the academic credits to be considered a second year student. So sometimes we have students who come in as first year students who brought in a lot of like AP credits and so forth. And by their second semester now, they can potentially be in second year standing and eligible for things like VIP. But if you currently have a second semester first year student who's kind of in the summer going to be considered a rising sophomore, they can participate in VIP. They're eligible for that. So when that application portal opens for fall VIP, they might want to take a look at teams and apply to those. But then you can also, it honestly, as a question already pointed out, it really depends on the faculty mentor, but there are faculty mentors who will take second year students if they have, you know, the combination of background coursework that they think they need. I do think that's a little more unusual. I think oftentimes kind of the sweet spot is once you're in the middle of your second year and so forth, but it does happen that students and rising sophomores get a position with a faculty mentor.
Could you go back to the VIP slide? Someone asked, where can we get more info about VIP?
The website here, vip.gautech.edu, is the resource for information about vertically integrated projects. They have I'm very impressed by their ability to show all the information about the teams. So if you go to that website, you'll see there's a menu for teams, and then there's a whole searchable, you can kind of select fields of interest, you know, that you want, that your student can, that if they want to focus on certain things. So, but this is the good place to go, vip.gautech.edu.
Thank you. Is there a possibility for summer internship or research, and can they stay on campus?
Yes, there is a possibility for summer research, and I will quickly see if I can pull up. So yes, there's a possibility for summer research. One of the things I would encourage folks to do, and now, right now is the time, if your student is thinking about summer research, right now is the time for them to start looking at programs, because if they're going to join an official summer program, a lot of those application deadlines are either January, February, or March. So there are oftentimes organized summer programs at different institutions. Some of them are called Research Experiences for Undergraduates, or REU. And those are 8-week programs, 10-week programs. They often have some professional development programming that go with them, like how to build your CV, how to look and apply for graduate school. If your student is interested in that, they really want to be looking and figuring out which ones they want to apply to, like now, because a lot of those application deadlines will pass once we get into March. So the other thing that we can do is talk a little bit about what opportunities are available outside of those formal programs. And oftentimes there are, in fact, some faculty that have students in the lab over the summer. That was something that I did because that's a time when we can really be productive. Students they might be taking a couple of classes, but they're certainly not taking the full course load that they would in an academic term. They have a little bit more time to dig into the project. On our website, which I'm going to attempt to share here. Let's see, let me go and share the correct. Here we go. So on our website, if you go to, undergradresearch.gatech.edu, if you go to Get Started, Research Opportunities, we actually have some listings of different research opportunities. And we have got over here on the right, a whole set of opportunities for summer research. So these are some Georgia Tech programs that are formal programs that are offered. And then these here, external opportunities, are some of these kind of formal summer programs that I was talking about. There is a lot of them. As whenever we get these, we try to post them here. Outside of the formal programs, that's a good thing to talk to faculty mentors about if they're accepting students over the summer or if they're hosting students over the summer. One of the issues with that can be funding. When I was a college student, I needed to make money over the summer. That's life. So I was trying to find opportunities where I could get paid. And some of those are out there, but they do require poking around to kind of see what funding is available.
Perfect. Is the motorsports club considered research?
Great question. I don't know anything about the motorsports club. If that's something that there's a student involved in the motorsports club and has a question about that, definitely have them get in touch with us, because first of all, that sounds awesome and I don't know anything about it. So yeah, please have them reach out if they're wondering about that.
Are some of these research projects open during the summer? I'm sorry, past that question, but can they be done outside of Atlanta during the summer remotely?
Depends on the program. Oh, okay. Let me back up, because I actually think that might be asking something different than I think. One way to interpret that question is, can a student go somewhere, like either back home or where they're going to be for the summer, that's not Atlanta, and continue to participate in a Georgia Tech research experience? That's
Right.
one way to interpret that question. And I would say that depends. I had my research program was what you might call wet lab, where someone actually has to be in the lab doing experiments. But then I also had a computational side of my research, and that absolutely could be done remotely. And I had a student who went home to Minnesota for the summer and did her entire computational project with me for the summer from her house in Minnesota, and it worked great. So kind of depends on your field. If you're doing CS work and you can do what you need to do with the computational resources you have, either at home or where you need to be over the summer, and your faculty or research group is okay with that, sure. But it might depend on field, and it just depends on making that arrangement with the folks you're working with.
Got it. I know we are pushed for time here. Are you available to answer a few more
Yeah,
questions? I think
sure.
we have about 5. Okay, perfect. Where would they go to find the formal summer programs you mentioned? I think we answered that one already.
Yes, am I still sharing it too? I never know if I'm
Yep,
still sharing.
yep.
Okay,
I was
yes,
about to say
right
we're on that
here.
now, so we can knock that one out.
And that is
And
just to remind folks, because I see here that the URL bar is not showing the full thing. How I got to this was go here from this homepage, and then if you go to Get Started, Research Opportunities, there you go, summer. Just figured I'd walk through that
Perfect.
again in case somebody missed it.
Approximate cost for research?
I'm not sure I know. I'm not sure I fully know what the question is
I
asking.
think they're asking, like, do you have like maybe an estimate of how much research opportunities cost, if there's any cost associated?
Okay, I'm trying to think about if there's any situations in which a student would be spending money to participate in research. They really shouldn't be.
Right.
The only possibility I can think of is if for some reason they enroll in a research course that has a fee associated with it, but I don't think that's true. So I think in terms of cost, The student really should not be having to spend money to participate in research. From my perspective, we very much want to avoid that. What we really want is for your student to either get credit or get paid to do research. That would be the ideal thing. So I think the only thing I would say is if there's a situation in which the student is volunteering their time and not getting academic credit or getting paid, you might want to think about kind of what the trade-offs are for that. But no, there
Correct.
shouldn't be any output of students' personal funds in order to participate in research. If that's happening somewhere in Georgia Tech, tell me because I want to know about it.
Right. Are first-year students considered for faculty mentored research projects? Are there summer-only research projects? I think we answered the summer-only part, but
Mhm.
are the first-year students considered for faculty mentored research projects?
Yes, but I would say that it's probably rare. I do know first-year students who found a position with a faculty mentor. But I do think it is unusual because oftentimes they are missing some of the foundational coursework that a faculty mentor really wants them to have for them to actually be able to have an effective research experience. I'll particularly see this sometimes with CS folks where they'll say, I need them to at least have had like intro to this before we can really bring them in and have them feel like they're not just everything's going over their head. So yes, if your student is extremely driven and extremely focused and really knows what they want, there's a chance they could get a position with a faculty mentor in their first year. But I would say if they poke around and ask in their first year and it doesn't happen yet, that's very typical. Oftentimes it takes a little bit for them to get the coursework, kind of establish that foundation, and then be able to reach out.
If you do not audit the research opportunity and you sign up for 6 credits of research, for example, are you charged tuition the same as a 6 credit class?
If your goal is to get graded academic credit, then that will be billed as you would for a traditional graded class, lecture class, or lab class. That's why I think it's great that we have the audit option, because it still appears on the student's transcript. So the student can still demonstrate that they've had continued participation or some participation in undergraduate research, but the audit course allows them to not be billed for it. They just won't get a grade for it. So if you're receiving a grade and that's going into the calculation of your GPA, then yes, that's a billable course, just like it would be for a lecture or lab course.
And then this is the last question, then the other one just sings your praises. So I'll read that one last. But this one says, what is usually considered foundational coursework?
It varies based on field, and
Yeah.
honestly, it varies based on faculty mentor. So you'll find, like, as a biology example, so you'll find some folks, so I'm a microbiologist. I was at a primarily undergraduate institution, so it was really my job to make sure that undergraduate students were getting research experiences. But you might find that a microbiology professor here at Tech would say, I'd at least like you to have taken micro before we start you on a project about bacteria. Or you might find that in an engineering class, they'll say, I at least want you to have taken kind of our intro level first year courses so that we know you've got this foundation and everybody has a common framework. So it's going to vary by discipline, and it probably will vary by faculty mentor, what they feel like for their research program is foundational. And that's a good question to ask when you're contacting faculty or when you're talking to the undergraduate research ambassadors in that field to say, hey, what do you feel like I'm going to need to know in order to actually be able to engage with this experience effectively?
Got it. And this one I thought was pretty cool. He says, our student started at GT in 2022 and found several research opportunities. He was able to be fully involved in a lab at Georgia Tech in his spring of his freshman year. Our students was selecting Georgia Tech over a lot of different universities because of undergraduate research, and other universities do not offer the amazing opportunities here at Georgia Tech. So I think that's just kind of speaking to the greatness of what you guys are doing. And we really appreciate you taking time to break this down for our parents and families. Laura, if you have the reaction, you want to give her like applause, happy, however you feel in the reactions, just to give her some kudos for this wonderful presentation. Feel free to do so. Yay, I see there. That's
Ah,
awesome.
thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. This recording will be available no later than tomorrow morning. We have to upload it to YouTube. Sometimes that takes all day, but as soon as it's available on our YouTube, we'll upload it to the Hive. And in the Hive, if you log into our our family portal, it's the left bottom column. That's where all of our previous webinars, today's webinar is going to be. So again, once you log into the Hive, the bottom left corner, this video will be available by tomorrow. All you have to do is click view webinars. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone's saying thank you to you right now. We appreciate it, like I said, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. If you ever have questions for parent family programs, of course, we're always available at parents@gatech.edu. Any closing remarks, Laura? Are you good to go?
I would just say that, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about the question that came through the Q&A from the person who said that their student had reached out to a lot of people and didn't get the response they were hoping for. We really want to help folks try to find research experiences. So if your student, the advice I gave today is a good place for your student to start. If your student goes through those things and is getting frustrated or discouraged, please have them reach out to us and kind of let us know what it is they've tried, because to the best of our ability, we're going to try to help students engage with undergraduate research. We really believe in it as experiential learning. We really want to help students who are trying to find that those opportunities, connect with them. So I was just thinking back on that and thinking, if that's your student's situation, if they've tried a lot of things and they're not having success, have them reach out to us, because we will do our best to help them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all again, and we're going to go ahead and log off and end the recording. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Jackets.